It's time now for another 27 News Early Morning Conversation, and today we welcome back a regular visitor, Shawnee County District Attorney Mike Kagay. Good morning and thanks for being here.
Good morning, David.
All right, let's start off with a Facebook group for Zoe Felix. Now, they've actually sent us a question that we want to send to you now, and they want to know about charges for either one or both parents over some type of neglect or something like that. Will there be any charges to one or both parents?
So at this point in time, I can tell you no charges have been referred to my office for consideration. Again, we're prosecutors, we're attorneys, we don't conduct investigations. We rely on our law enforcement partners who are very thorough in what they do, very experienced in this regard. And so at this point in time, we are focused on the prosecution of Michael Cherry in relation to this case.
Now, in the prosecution of Michael Cherry, and he's the man criminally charged with the murder of the 5-year-old, will there be a death penalty sought in this case?
That is a determination we have yet to make. That's something that happens after arraignment, and arraignment would happen after a preliminary hearing, and the preliminary hearing has yet to be scheduled. It's fairly typical in a case like this, based on the volume involved in the investigation, the scope of it, and the severity of the charges, that the process is going to take longer to play out in court. What we've done to this point is file a series of motions and responses, both sides, and we've had one hearing on that in court, and the court has made some rulings, but we're still in kind of a pre-evidentiary motion phase in the case.
If you had to guess, 6 months out, year out, or even more?
For the preliminary hearing, I would say probably sometime later this year.
Okay. To another case now that happened on Friday. There was something going on with the conviction of Richard Daniel Showalter. That's for a 2018 double homicide in the capital city. So what happened on Friday?
Well, on Friday, the Supreme Court affirmed the convictions that we obtained. This is back in 2021 when that case actually went to trial. Again, you know, the length of time in the case, right? The crime occurs, we go through our prosecution of it, and then if we obtain the convictions, then we go on to an appellate phase. And you can see how long that process takes too. But on Friday, the Supreme Court affirmed those convictions. His representation had made some arguments about things that they alleged we had done inappropriately during the trial, and the Supreme Court said no, everything we did was fine, or at least enough to sustain the conviction.
And let me get your quick take on this. After a record-setting year of homicides in 2023 in Topeka, seems like we're on a much better pace this year so far. What's your take on that?
I think I think last year was a blip. You know, it was horrible, and it was difficult to go through that. I think as a community, and certainly law enforcement in my office, it was very challenging. But that's not typical of this community, right? Those numbers are not typical of this community. And if you look at the 2 years before that, those numbers I think were 14 and 18 in terms of overall homicide. And so that is more typical. That's more what we usually see here on an average basis. And so what I'm hearing you say is that so far this year seems more typical, right, as opposed to last year, which was, again, just terrible.
Now we're in the last day or two, I guess, of Teen Violence Dating Awareness Month. 1 in 3 teens experiences some sort of abuse in a relationship even before adulthood. So what other stats can you share, and what program or initiative is actually offering resources to help out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think when it comes to teen violence, teen dating violence specifically, these are conversations that we need to have at home with our kids.
Right.
You know, I've got a couple teenagers. It's my responsibility as their parent to sit down with my spouse and talk to them about some things that they can expect. And this comes back to just treating people with respect, right? They're young, you know, teenagers, and this applies to college-age students as well. They're not really fully formed in terms of how they see the world, who they are as a person, and if they're engaged in an intimate relationship like this or a dating relationship, it can make things confusing, it can heighten emotions. But if you go back to the core value here, which is to treat yourself with respect and treat everyone else with respect, that really addresses the issue. And I think when that breaks down, and when someone feels like my need for X, Y, or Z is more important than my need to treat someone else with respect, that's when you run into issues.
All right, we have about a half a minute left, but I know you're really concerned about human trafficking. That's been something you've been very passionate about trying to solve and stop. What are your thoughts and what's happening in the near term on that particular issue?
Yeah, so I'm excited to announce that we are this week actually preparing to make offers of employment to 2 members of our task force. And we've gone through a very extensive interview process. We've got some great candidates, and we're very excited to get going. It's my hope that here in March we're going to officially launch the work of that task force.
All right, can't wait to hear more on that. And Mike, thank you again for the time.
Thanks, David.
All right, Becky, take it away.